Welcome Foursquare founder Dennis Crowley and TechCrunch's Colleen Taylor.
All right. Hey, Dennis. Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Hello.
First, I want to start. You look good.
Thank you.
I've heard
so
that.
Do you. You look nice.
Thank you. I've heard that you ran in the Boston Marathon.
I did. I ran. I did not finish, but I got just about to mile 26.
Right. Yeah. How was that?
It was a stressful afternoon. It was like my girlfriend finished, and she was just past the finish line when the bombs went off, and I had my whole family that was there, which was particularly stressful. But luckily, everyone is safe.
Right. You're here.
Yeah.
Right. That's. I mean. I just found that out the other day that you had actually run in the marathon. And so
yeah, actually, I had set up Foursquare to auto check in and then push to Twitter and Facebook every time I passed one of the mile markers.
Right.
And so the moment that I passed 25 but not 26, like my Twitter just blew up and my text messages blew up, and all the cell service was down, and so I had was able, luckily, to get out a couple messages about us being okay. But it was interesting that we use social media in that way, and then it responded to us in an interesting way too.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, so let's talk Foursquare. That's what we're here to talk about. And I just kind of want to address this right away, because I feel like I've noticed, Foursquare has always been this company, especially here in New York, that people feel so positively about, and it's a great company, you have a great team, people love you, you're a very popular founder in the scheme of things. But I just feel like in recent months, something has kind of turned in the way that a lot of people talk about Foursquare. Have you picked up on that?
Well, I think we're not the shiny new thing anymore, right? We're a company that's been around for 4 years, and I think there's a lot of people that understand what we're trying to do around, we talk about becoming the location layer for the internet and all the interesting things we're doing of connecting people and businesses. And I think there's a lot of people that don't, right? And I also think we're in that interesting hazing period for companies where when people are still skeptical of is this company going to be able to pull it off or not? And we've seen it. We saw Facebook go through this, and we saw Twitter go through this. And I think we're in the stage right now where we're going through it, and we've seen other people go through it as well. So it's not terribly daunting. It's more just, okay, it's fine if people are skeptical about what we're doing. Let's just put our heads down, focus on the work that we're doing and the great products that we're pushing out, and we'll see where it goes.
And can you talk, has there been, because as you guys were raising this money that you were raising, that closed a couple weeks ago, I mean, a lot of times companies have to be quiet during those kind of periods. You kind of don't talk numbers so much. Is there any kind of, there's a lot of talk about what your numbers are, what your revenue is. Can you give me any numbers here?
Yeah, we don't talk about growth numbers so much. We just don't like to beat our chest about a lot of this stuff. I think there's a little bit of perception that we're not growing, which is false. We look at we look at all the numbers that we track on a regular basis, like the number of active users, the signups that we're getting on a regular basis, the monthly signups that we're getting, the number of check-ins, the number of people that are using search, the web visitors. There was a stat about that recently. All these things are up 10 to 30% month over month. And so the company's doing, we're doing well, we're performing well. I don't know who's been using the most recent version of the products we've been pushing out, but we're like that company that kind of quietly pushes out big enhancements to everything that we do on the consumer side, everything that we're offering merchants with our merchant tools and all the tools that we build for local businesses. And I think people get caught up in the story and not necessarily the things that we're actually doing. So, I mean, it's just more reason for us to kind of put our head down and just continue executing the way that we've been.
Right. And I want to get specific here as well, though, about some of the negative talk that has happened. I've got to talk about Keith Raboy, the former COO of Square, well-known investor now. He came out on Twitter and kind of very publicly sent some jibes at you about saying your active users, there were only 40,000 of them, and that the only savior for you guys would be some Hail Mary, fire sale situation.
Yeah, I don't think he's looking at the same data that we're looking at. The thing that no one pointed out, he's on the board of Yelp. And I think if I was on the board of Yelp and I looked at all the ways that Foursquare is innovating, all the things that we've been doing with the new product that we've been pushing out, we've got 40,000 people that are using the API, we've built these credit card specials, we're basically inventing the future of local search, If I was on the board of Yelp, I'd be stressed about it too and probably speaking out about it. But yeah, I mean, we're doing great stuff. Like we talk about this all the time. Like you just don't pay attention to the people that are misinformed, like to the haters that are just poking holes in your business. Like we look at what we're doing, we can see how it's transforming the way that businesses reach out to potential customers. The merchants are digging the tools. Like we're seeing growth all over the world. And so we just keep doing what we're doing.
And I want to talk a bit about that API and about, one thing you said in this back and forth with Keith on Twitter was that you guys are building the location data layer for the internet.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, if you look at, look at all like the leading consumer apps that have started over the last couple of years or so. Like, Instagram is using the Foursquare API for their Places database. Vine is using it. Path is using it. Uber is using it. Flickr is using it. It's like, right now a lot of these products are using it primarily just to take a piece of content and tie it to a specific place. And that's great, right? People are using our API. Like we have one of the best place databases in the world, which I think is fantastic. But like we're also generating all this other data that's not being used, but it's being used by us, but not by some of these other API partners. Like we know, like what are the interesting places around, this area on a Monday morning, and which ones are going to be interesting to certain types of people, and which ones are going to be, are going to be popular a couple weeks from now, which ones used to be popular in the past. Like we're just we're very smart about all the local data that we have. And so when we talk about us being able to power this location layer of the internet, I mean, Facebook has come along and basically done this for social. Like their social graph is the one that everyone uses. Like, you kind of lean on that so that you don't have to reconstruct the wheel. And we're kind of doing the same thing around places. If you need a list of places that are popular for brunch in the East Village, like you go to Foursquare to get that. If you need a list of all the things that are going, all the possible places that you could be within JFK Airport, you go to Foursquare for that. If you're looking for a list of the trending places that happen to be in this area of San Francisco, you can ask Foursquare those questions and we can answer that stuff for you. And that data set, like, we own it, we've built it. No one else has that. And now I think as location is becoming a more important part of, not just those consumer apps, but just devices in general, like the devices that we carry in the pockets, the ones that we'll have on our wrists, the ones that we might be wearing, in front of our eyes. Like all that stuff is going to be tied into these location data sets. And that's, one of the biggest assets that we have.
And is that something that you would say, years ago when you started Foursquare, is that what you had in mind, to be that? Or at what point did it evolve that you realized, we're powering this, we can provide this to other apps?
Well, we kind of knew it initially that we knew that we couldn't use any existing place databases because they just didn't do what we wanted them to do. That's why we ended up making our own back in 2009. I don't think we anticipated that it would have grown in the way that it's done. And a lot of it's just underutilized. Like we have APIs for a lot of the merchant tools, and I don't think people have really cracked those open yet. We have APIs for a lot of the things that we do with our search and explore and kind of our local recommendations products, and people aren't leaning on those yet. But I think if you fast forward a year or so, you'll see that a lot of people are building off that as well, and really digging into a lot of the Foursquare data, to build applications that are a lot smarter about place and context.
And I want to ask, just sort of also as part of that, the evolution of a company. I think a lot of founders could probably relate. When you start building something, you don't necessarily always know what it's going to be. And I want to ask, what was Foursquare? What is Foursquare now? And what do you think Foursquare will be when you talk about a year out or 2 years out?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think the big overarching vision for us hasn't really changed. And this goes even back to the days of Dodgeball, and when we were thinking about the stuff even before then. It's we came out with it. We started all this stuff thinking let's build software that makes cities easier to use, right? And now we think about it as let's make software that helps you things that help you find the best of what's nearby. No matter where you are, Foursquare should be able to serve up okay, there's something interesting here. This is a place that we think would be interesting. A bunch of your friends have been here. You should go check this out. There's all this stuff all the time happening in the real world, and I think we're one of the best engines to be able to surface that to people. And we're doing that all the time within our apps. But when you talk about, what is the future of this stuff, we think about how can that API, how can that location layer for the internet go off and power all these other additional things. And so, I think one of the things that's interesting is there's all this value you can tease out of Foursquare, but in order to do it, you have to take your phone out of your pocket and you have to continue to go into Foursquare and ask Foursquare a question. And that works. We do a really great job at that. But we're at the point now where we can start to anticipate the things that people would be interested in before they even think about asking Foursquare for that. And so whether that means that we're buzzing the phone in your pocket, whether that means that someday, some wearable device that you have is displaying Foursquare data, whether that means we build it into cars someday, that when you put your car in park, like the in-car navigation screen ends up showing Foursquare data and Foursquare dots. There's just lots of ways to start spreading this information around. I think we're going to end up powering a lot of that for folks.
Okay, and how much of that are you guys going to be building yourself? When you talk about wearable technology, is that something that Foursquare is?
No, we don't want to get in the hardware game, but we pay a lot of attention to the folks that are inventing the next generation hardware. Like I was just at that Mobile World Congress conference in Barcelona, where you get to see all the new handsets and you get to see all the new gadgets. And you'd be surprised the number of non-phone gadgets that people had that were talking about Foursquare integration or showing the X-rated stuff running on those devices. And it's like, it's really exciting. Like we've been living in a world for a long time where, the primary screens that people interact with when they're away from their away from their computer is their phones. Like we're going to live in that world for a while, but you're starting to see other types of screens, other types of displays, surface on people. And like we have a really great shot at being able to power all like the interesting contextual engines and the location layer behind a lot of those as well.
And this all sounds great, but not yet have you said, and we're going to make a shit ton of money doing it.
Well, you didn't ask me that.
Right, I know that, and so that's what I'm going to ask. How does revenue play into this? What's the how much pressure is on you right now to really start making money and become, a profitable business eventually?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of folks that think that we don't know how to generate revenue, that we're not generating revenue, that we don't care about generating revenue, which is wrong. We started our efforts in this last summer. And so, we've been building merchant tools all along. It's just last summer was the first time they actively went out and charged for them. We've been seeing steady revenue growth every month. This past month, March, was our biggest revenue generating month that we've had so far. And we expect that to continue going forward. Like we're routinely signing, six-figure deals with large national merchants and getting them to use a lot of our tools to start to drive foot traffic into their businesses. And the next thing for us is like we can see that that's working. Like it works really well. And it works on the national scale very, very well. And so what's next is taking those tools and kind of tailoring them just a bit so that they work for local businesses. And so we're working on a whole bunch of self-service tools right now, which enable any local business to come in and say, this is my business. I've claimed it on Foursquare. By the way, we've already got 1 million of these businesses claimed. A lot of them have already given us their credit card number because you have to give your credit card number to the claim. And then we can say, hey, would you like to spend $50 with us? Would you like to spend $100, $200 with us in order to drive X amount of customers into your store? And what's interesting about the Foursquare model is that they're not buying ad impressions, they're buying actions. It's like, if you spend X amount of dollars, we will surface these messages to people that we think would like your place, because Foursquare is very good at doing that, and then we will only charge you when we can drive those customers in your store. We've been very successful at doing this at large national retailers, and we can already show that it's working with the trials that we're doing with local businesses. And so that's really what the summer's about for us.
And how much revenue do you expect to make in 2013?
We're a private company, so we don't have to disclose our master plans for you, but we've set ourselves up with nice ambitious targets, and we look like we're on target so far to hit our goals.
And how does this shift here that, like you said, you started last year, how does that change what Foursquare's like as a company, when it comes to staff and when it comes to culture? You're talking about, adding salespeople, where it's been, an engineering firm up until sort of now. Like, how does that shift the culture of what Foursquare is?
Yeah, we hired a chief revenue officer last year, Stephen Rosenblatt, and he's been fantastic at helping us build out our local sales efforts, as well as helping us guide, the monetization parts of the product as well. There's now salespeople within Foursquare. We have a team that's working on reaching out to national retailers. We have a growing team that's out there reaching out to local businesses, and we're just getting started here. And it hasn't really, it doesn't change the culture of the company so much. Maybe if you left it unchecked, that it would if you just hired salespeople and put them in the corner. But one of the things that we've been very good at is we have our company meetings. The product team gets up and talks about all the things that the monetization team is doing. The salespeople get up and they talk about what's working, what's not working when we try to sell to local businesses. It's like we've worked very hard at trying to make sure that we're not just hacking monetization efforts and a sales effort onto the product and onto the company, but instead weaving it through everything that we've been doing. And I think we've been pretty successful at that so far.
Great. And I want to go back a bit as well to what we just started with, talking about, the criticism that you guys get. I think an opportunity for criticism was a couple weeks ago when you had raised this new round of funding. Mm-hmm. You're in the news. It's a convertible debt raise, $41 million. That's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And it's a financial thing. When you're raising, you can't talk about what it was like, but I want to ask, what was that process like, raising money? There were a lot of reports. I know TechCrunch, we said, you were having some hard times raising that money. Were there any misconceptions out there about what was happening, what that process was like surrounding the funding?
No, I think it's like, we're a really interesting company to a lot of people, but we're also still like relatively small. We're 160 people. We've got a little bit over 30 million users. We've got 1 million businesses that have signed up. And we're starting to generate revenue. Like, the numbers aren't huge yet, but you can see how the story is coming together. And I think when the smartest folks that we talk to, they can actually they can look at what we're doing in terms of all the data that we're generating about places, all the intent with people trying to go to places, the businesses that are begging us to just bring more customers into my store, and how can Foursquare help me with that? And these tools haven't been reinvented in a long time. And we're right at we're right in the sweet spot of being able to make that happen. But we haven't made it happen yet. We still have to continue to execute and make all of that stuff work. And I think that's the big bet that a lot of, that people are making on us. That's why it's so interesting that all 4 of our original investors are back in. They're you guys are going to end up doing this, and it's going to be a big deal. And we're going to, we fully support all of the efforts that are going on.
Right. And also when you get to that Series D level, everyone starts talking about exit. And you've had investors who have said this is going to be a public company. You compare yourself to Facebook, to Twitter. What can you say about IPO? But we hear about you guys as an acquisition target all the time.
Yeah, we never really comment on exit strategies or what we're thinking about. The way that I think about it, we spent 4 years building what I think is a pretty amazing company, and 4 years building a product that is I think people are just starting to understand what it can do, what we're trying to do. And we're just in that spot where hey, these devices that people have been talking about for 20 years are now on people's wrists and now on people's faces. That's really interesting. And we've been kind of hustling this whole time to get to this sweet spot right now. And so as long as we just continue building out our products, as long as we continue innovating here and out innovating everyone in the space, as long as we continue to build that location layer of the internet so everyone can benefit from all the data that we're collecting, and as long as we're building tools that merchants continue to love, we can operate pretty well as an independent company. So I don't try to get distracted by that, but I really like the spot that we're in right now.
And do you wish, or if going back and doing it again, would you have started focusing on revenue earlier?
No, I think we did it. I think we've done it pretty well. I might have different answers to that later on, but we've grown an audience. We've told a really good story about what we're doing. We've got 1 million merchants that are already in the platform, and I think one of the kiss of deaths is charging people too early for a product that's a little bit half-baked. And we've gone through 4 years of product iteration, not just on the consumer side, but on the merchant side. And I feel we finally have something that really works. When we go out and we show it to local merchants, it does what it's supposed to do. Since the early days, we would show merchants the dashboard, and they're hey, it's great that you show me stats about my customers. Just make a button I can click that says bring more customers into my store. And for the first time, we've built that, and we can go out and sell that. And we've sold it to national players, and now we're selling it to local merchants, and it works. So I'm glad that we didn't really stress this stuff much earlier on, because I think we really would have screwed it up. But I feel really good about what we have right now and our ability to really grow that going forward.
And what's your biggest challenge on the user side? With the interface, you said you have this search capability, and people don't always want to open up their phone to do it. Is that the biggest challenge? What's the biggest challenge when you look forward to even just the next 3 to 6 months?
On the consumer side, I think there's a lot of people that still think of us as the 2009 Foursquare, which was points and badges and stuff. And that stuff still exists in the app. But the biggest haters and the biggest critics of Foursquare, I think, are the same people that they haven't opened the app in 6 months. Right? And if you go open the app now and you see social map, personalized local recommendations, the ability to anticipate and predict people's intent, it's rocket science in the sense we're doing really interesting stuff in there. And I don't think, I think there's a lot of people that just haven't figured out how much the app has changed recently. And I think that applies to consumers too. We got to win back consumers. We got to show, hey, this is something that fits into your everyday life, and it's not just points and badges. And we can see that happening all over the world. And I think, we're continuing to see those great growth patterns.
And who is using the app, and who would you like to see more of using the app? What's the demographic right now? Who is opening the app every day?
We can kind of run the numbers here, and it generally, first of all, you see it all over the world, right? And we actually see amazing growth outside of the US, which is kind of nuts. But generally, when you kind of boil it down, it's like mid to late 20s, more in denser areas than not. It's pretty evenly split between male, female. But it's like there's no big secrets in terms of like what are the core demographics. But once you hit 30 million users, you get a little bit of everyone using it. It has been interesting to see it trend a little bit down towards college kids, and at the same time trend a little up to parents and whatnot. But at this point, it's like you can't just pigeonhole it's one specific demographic. It's a little bit of everyone.
Cool. And last question here. We just have a few seconds left, but besides Foursquare, what's your favorite app right now, or what are you using all the time? Something that maybe the rest of us aren't keen on yet.
Oh, I mean, I don't know a lot of stuff that you guys don't know, but I'll tell you, I've been really interested in watching, just the whole like Uber space and the Halo space, especially here in New York. And I've become a super user of Uber, and I'm looking to play around with Halo as well. So that stuff is like, it's transforming the way that you live your everyday life, right? And not to like throw another Foursquare plug in. Like I feel like that's the stuff that I kind of gravitate towards. Like anything that you're doing to make someone's day a little bit better, a little bit easier. Like I love that stuff, right? And I feel like those companies are tackling problems that real people have.
Great. Well, Dennis Crowley, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.